Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. Good afternoon, everyone, and it gives me great pleasure to represent my management here and my colleagues on behalf of Aqua Power Barca, present to you latest development and news from Aqua Power Barca. The session today, we have broken down to primarily four areas of discussion. The introduction part, I will try to cover an overview of Oman power and water sector in general, then slightly going into the company framework and the contracts and the risk associated with our business. That's covered in the first theme, the introduction part. My colleague Saif will present the operational highlights, and finally Mr. Osman, the CFO of the company, will present the financial highlights of the company. Eventually, after all the three are finished, then we will be welcoming questions from the audience. And while we are presenting, may I kindly ask you to log your questions and keep all the questions at the end, at the Q&A sessions. I think it's quite interesting to give an overview of Oman. Geographically, we all know how Oman is, and is primarily covered by three main networks. The primary network in Oman is the northern part, which covers مسقط region, باطنة, داخلية, شرقية, and ظاهرة. All of that is called main interconnected system. It's the most populated region, and it interconnected already in terms of power and partially water as well. The second one, which is most of the remote areas, which are either remotely populated and far away from the main interconnected system. And finally, the southern region is covered by the FAR network. Now, if you see from all these networks, if I mostly focus on the main interconnected system, where we are, Barca, Aqua Power Barca is here. It's actually divided into three broad categories. The first category, which is the list of all the companies, mostly registered and listed in MSM. These are what I call the generation and, from power point of view, generating companies, for water producing companies as well. So there's a combination. Some of them have both, like our company, which is Aqua Power Barca, has both electricity and water generation. So this is the upstream part, what I call in terms of business value chain, is the generation side. You have in the middle, which is more of the transmission, covered by Oman Electricity Distribution Company, interconnection company, and then the procurement company, which is Oman Power and Water Procurement Company. Once it is procured and transmitted, then you have three main companies who are primarily dealing with the distribution to the residential and industrial parts. And each company, when you have Mazoon, you have Majan, and you have, each of them have number of accounts or residential accounts or billing accounts under each one. So our primary business is in the power generation and water production. Similarly, for the remaining segments, whether it is rural or urban, are following the same setup. This slide gives you an overview of the power demand and generation in Oman. And in particular, I need to highlight to you, there's a slight difference between what is the average and what is the peak. The peak, typically we experiencing it in the mid of the year, in the peak summer periods, which is typically a few months from June, July to August. You have the peak demand, and on the rest is what I call the average baseload production. Now, in each one of those, the OPWP produces an annual report on updated a 7-year plan. In this plan, they typically indicate to the sector and to the producers and to the consumers what is a low case, what is an expected case, when it is a peak case or a high case. And from both the average, if you can see this, both sides, whether it's an average use or peak demand, all of them are growing around 7% in terms of power, 7% annual growth. And by 2024, it is expected around 10,500 megawatt of capacity to cover the peak period right here. Now, on this side of the slide, you see the list of all the companies. 2 of them already contractually completed last year, and they are no longer in operation, like Gubra and Wadi al-Jizi. Barkawan, which is Aqua Power Barka, is is highlighted in blue right there. We have still operational activities, and our current contracts will expire 2021. Similarly, for the water, it's the same situation. We have from Public Authority of Water a projection, and it has different different segments. One is the Muscat zone, you have the Barka zone, and you have the Suhar zone, and each has its own projections. Expected growth to slow down from 2024 from 6% to 3.5%. And on the same token, you have a list of companies who have capacity to produce water. Barka, Aqua Power Barka 1, we have three modules to operate. One is from thermal point of view, and the other 2 are RO, which has been an addition. All of them have similar expiry period in 21. So this is basically an overview of the power and water sector in Oman. Now I zoom in more specific to the company, Aqua Power Barka, the business framework, how it is structured, and who are the main stakeholders. Our capacity, as I indicated earlier, we have 427 megawatt for power and a combined water capacity of 42.5 million gallon per day, which covers both the initial phase and the additional phases which added to the company. We are actually, if I put it here, the centerpiece, Aqua Power Barka, interacting quite heavily with a number of stakeholders, primarily from fuel point of view, fuel gas point of view. We have a natural gas sales agreement with the Minister of Oil and Gas, so we procure the gas from the Minister of Oil and Gas on a long-term basis based on the contract we have OPWP. OPWP, which is the official off-taker in Oman, have a purchase agreement with us for power and water, and that is in line with the fuel gas allocated. We have the transmission company agreement also for the electricity. AIA, the Authority of Electricity Regulator, is the regulator of the business sector and also provides licenses for the generation companies. We have NOMAC Oman, some of the management team members are here who are actually actively involved in the operation and maintenance of the plant under O&M agreement. And of course, we have lenders and technical services that do. And this is like a broad segment of our main shareholders, as outlined here. I'd like to just give you a bit of introduction to the next stage, which is the next presentation, is actually our systems are based on latest, at the time, of the most efficient fuel consumption in terms of power generation. We have a combined cycle gas turbine technology, which consumes, basically utilizing gas turbines, and the heat generated emitted from the gas turbine reutilized to generate steam, which generates further power additional to the grid. In terms of water, we are having 2 technologies. One is thermal, the MSF, a multi-stage flash, and this is something which we'll be talking about a bit later in more detail. And the mechanical aspect of it, which is the reverse, based on the reverse osmosis basis, RO plant type. This table, just, I don't know, it's not that may be readable, but it's accessible by the company, and as well, it's more of a general overview of the technology used, the capacity we have, the contract terms, the commercial operation date, and the cycle, the asset life cycle. Some of them you can see the combined cycle of the MSFE, the gas turbines have a 40-year life cycle. The RO plants, which is the membrane-based, are 30-year based, and the main contractors, and these kind of agreements which we have with off-taker, OPWP, and the terms, and the type of contract. Some of them what they call build, own, operate. This is what The terminology here is BOO, build, own, operate. Some aspects in other cases you have build, own, operate, and transfer, which we don't have. We have here build, own, operate. This is the expiration date, and the revenue streams for all of them are quite similar. They have a capacity charge, they have a fixed operation and maintenance charge, and you have a variable charge or an operation cost depending on how much production is allocated to us to balance the fuel gas utilized. This slide, we tried very much to indicate to you how the contractual relationship we have with OPWP, Oman Power Water Procurement Company. We have two types. I'm thinking, if I start on the left side, is the power plant. The original plant had a power plant and a MSF desalination, a thermal-based desalination, water desalination plant. Has a life cycle of 40 years, asset life of 40 years. We have completed the first stage, the first contract, which was from 2003 till 2018, last year. It was negotiated before that for an extension, which was successfully achieved last year, a year before 2017. And we are now in the current extension phase, which is from 2018 to 2021. On this phase, I may highlight that the water desalination side is on a call-on, call-off, which is maybe on a need basis, not on a continuous operation basis, on a need basis. Similarly, for the, now you can see here on a dotted slide, Power 22 tender. This is something which is, we are already engaged with the authorities, with the OPWP, to establish a contractual relationship post-2021. So this is something already been disclosed to the MSM, that we are already in the formal discussions with OPWP and in that process of procurement or establishing contract post-2021. For the water side, which is non-thermal based, the RO based, we have two contracts and two expansions, the expansion 1 and expansion 2, and both were made coterminous with the original plant in 2018. We had also an extension from OPWP from 2018 till 2021, and now we also have, similar to Power 22, we have a request for offer, because in this case, the difference between the two is that this is a request for is purely uniquely to Barca plants, RO plants. Now, as I mentioned, the company is already in formal discussions with for both the power and water. In addition to the typical standard contractual arrangement, which is a procurement arrangement for long-term arrangement, there is an effort from AR and OPWP to establish a spot market in Oman, starting with the power side, and that will be launched in 2020 on a trial basis. We're already getting ready and has been in sort of frequent workshops between all the generators, power generators, on that aspect to make, to reduce the systems, to integrate between the generators and the off-taker, in this case OPWP, and it will be launched toward 2020 on a trial basis. Now, for the RO plants, we have been asked last year on a one-to-one basis. That's why it is a request for offer from OPWP. We have submitted our offer, and that offer, unfortunately, was not accepted. And this is now in discussion with certain sort of loophole that we cannot disclose at this stage. Under the Power 2022, we, as I mentioned earlier, we have two business units in there, or two revenue streams. One is the power, the other one is the MSF, the thermal desalination. We believe now the thermal desalination, and this is the main subject which can explain the sudden change in revenue for 2018, is actually we had to impair, and we had to take 31.5. It's a non-cash recognition in our accounts, because there's a difference between the book value of the assets and the remaining asset life of the assets, and the contractual terms which we have, which will end in 2021. And based on IFRS, and I leave it to my colleagues here for if further questions are required, but then we have to manage our balance, our expected future revenues, and the book value of the asset. Now, both sides, in terms of RFO and Power 2, these are still live discussions, even though what we have presented is still under discussion between certain authorities and the company. This is my last slide on the introduction part. Typically, any company will have to manage inherited or built-in risk within the sector, within the business it is, and some of it also unforeseen, which is external, that come into the business and has to be dealt accordingly. For a power generation company, or power and water generation company, we have typically most common risk is availability, breakdowns of equipment, and sudden accidental damage of certain units. Now, for us, for Aqua Power Barca, that translated into few of these risks. One is, as I just mentioned earlier, we are confronted with a major risk is renewal of existing contracts. We realize we have a contractual relationship until December 2021. We are in a process of renewal, like many other generating companies with OPWP, but still the risk remains post-2021 and what kind of contracts that will avail with the authorities. The RO plants, unlike the thermal type, RO plants are more mechanical, and so they are more susceptible to variation in the quality of the seawater. We have experienced quite a severe changes, drastic changes in the quality of the seawater, and that we had to deal and caused certain frost outages. We have been disclosed in the past in MSM, and actually we have it under control where certain technology providers from our equipment manufacturers and NOMAD management and know-how are dealing with these risks, and we believe they are within contained situation. So we have as disclosed earlier, fourth quarter last year, we had two severe incidents where we lost completely the power plant. Initially started with the gas turbine generator 2, and in a month later we had another, or a few weeks later we had another failure on the GTO1, the gas turbine 1, and because of the two were out, we eventually had lost complete power capacity, power generation capacity. Luckily, I think due to the effort and sort of determination by the management and the NOMAC technical know-how and support from OEM, the first generator, which is GT2, the gas turbine 2, was repaired on site in a record time, given the severity of the damage, and was put back in operation. Similarly, for gas turbine 1, the generator set was beyond repair, could have been repaired, but it would have taken 4 to 5 months of repair. The management, the shareholders, the board of directors, and the OEM in this aspect pursued a different option, which is procuring a complete new generator set. Was procured and brought in from Italy and was repaired in January, and both units were in operation by end of January, and we recovered back 100% of our capacity by end of January from power side. Authority of Electricity and Regulation is actually working in line with most of the power generator, basically giving the essential element of having power and water is to prevent such risks from coming from cyber space, and particularly intervention like unwelcoming visitors, stopping our businesses, or intentionally damaging our operations. Under this cybersecurity, we see it as a new hidden risk, and we have prepared the assets on that basis. Many of the hardware were installed, test trials were done, and recently we have also been audited by the authority on our readiness and sort of possibility for us to recover from such incidents. I see this, like I said, main four of those are the main risks which are associated with the company. Some of them are operational and under control, some of them are beyond our control and require extreme dialogue with the off-taker side. Now, that's my high-level introduction of the business, of the sector, of the company, and I leave now the next theme of our presentation, which is the operational aspect, to my colleague Saif.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Saif Al-Ghafri, and I'm going to cover the operational highlight for this presentation. In the operational highlight, I will start with the safety. Safety comes first for our employee and for our contractor and the community as well. And to ensure that we have a safe workplace for the contractor, there are targets which are set within the organization. And during the year, all the targets were met. Man hours, days without LTA, unsafe act, unsafe condition were met by the team, and even the team have reported more than the target. Thanks God, Alhamdulillah, the business has achieved 16 years without LTA. This is because of the safety culture from day one of the business, and it has continued and maintained by the support of the management. When we talk about the power generation, the power plant during the past years has achieved a very good reliability factor, which was in the range above 99.9. And as mentioned by Mr. Sالم السيباني, in 2018 we had unforeseen event which has affected the reliability factor. But if you go through the graphs, you can see that the business has achieved above the target in most of the years in the past. In the water production, the MSFE has proven that it is one of the best technology in the region, and it has achieved a very good availability of above 99.9 and its reliability despite the water changes, seawater quality changes. And when we talk about the RO1 and RO2, the new expansion projects, the RO1, the capacity of RO1 is 10 MIGD, and the capacity of RO2 is 12.5 MIGD. In 2018, you can see the load factor was less, and this is because of there are new installation in the same in the Barca area came in service, and that's why they were dispatched and the load factor was reduced in the RO1 and RO2. The main challenge in RO1 and RO2 is the changes in the seawater quality, which is affecting also the availability during the year. I think I went very fast maybe, and I will leave to the financial. Mr. Osman will give the financial highlights.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, and thank you so much for having me here. Thank you, Salim and Saif, for providing the overview and operational highlights. As discussed, the next slide essentially provides a very high-level overview of financial performance of our company over the period of 5 years. As you can see, the revenues have been steadily growing up from 2014, when we commissioned our RO plants. There was a slight dip in the revenues for 2018, which is reflective of the 2 gas turbine generator failure incidents, which was just mentioned by Saif. So of course, it impacted our revenues for the full year 2018. Similarly, if you look at the graph for the gross profit, it has remained very steadily over the course of 5 years. It is reflective of the world-class operational performance of the business and the contractual framework, considering the tariffs are fixed in the long-term contracts with the government. The next graph we have presented within this slide is the net profit. We have splitted the net profit presentation in two graphs. One essentially is without the one-off unusual events that the business has experienced, and the one which basically includes the impact of those events. If you look at the first graph, which is without these one-off events, you will notice that the net profits have been very consistent year on year. The business has performed remarkably well, has been very reliable over the course of a long period, and the financial performance is a result of that operational excellence. Unfortunately, the business has experienced few one-off unusual events. Back in 2017, when it lost a tax dispute with the tax authorities, unfortunately, Supreme Court decided against the company, and it impacted the business in 2017. Similarly, 2018 was impacted negatively by two events. One, of course, the revenue or gross profit that we lost because of the two generator failures. In addition, due to no contract being signed with the government for the MSFE desalination plant, it required an assessment under the IFRS for an impairment. This assessment was done by the company, which was agreed by its external auditors as well, and accordingly an impairment of around 31 million Omani Riyal has taken in the books. Consequently, the net profit after this effect is reflected in this graph, which is 16.9 million loss. Unfortunate, but this is the result of the things that are happening in the market, which is changing around us. There is another slide in which the same financial performance is given in terms of the gross profit margin and the net profit margin. You can clearly see that the business has performed remarkably, consistently, and at a world-class level, which again reflects a very, very high level operational performance. The plant has been seen by the government entities and the regulatory authorities as a very high reliable plant. Another graph that we have presented is related to the dividend distributions that company has done over the last 5 years. Unfortunately, due to the tax case we lost, no dividend was declared or paid for 2018. But you can clearly see that previously in last 4 years, the dividend distribution has been very high. The philosophy and the policy of the company is to distribute dividend based on cash available after the debt service and meeting the operating expenses. For comparison purposes, we have also included a graph right at the right corner side of the slide, where we have given a 5-year industry dividend graph. Basically, what we are trying to tell here is that yes, Aqua Power Barca has been very reliable, has been distributing dividends at a very high level compared to the industry market. One more slide that I have included for all of you is the share price evolution. This is starting from 2013 until today, so it's around 5 to 6 year period horizon. And you can clearly see that the share price has moved very steadily upwards over the course of previous 3 or 5 years. I have tried to identify a few reasons what has basically impacted the share price. Essentially, the two projects that we did back in 2012 and 2014 in terms of RO, I'm sure you all agree that in a conventional power company, the growth in terms of expanding its capacity is not that easy. But we are glad that we were able to expand our business in terms of those two RO businesses in last 2 years. Obviously, the share price impacted a bit in 2018 when unfortunately Supreme Court ruled against the company for the tax dispute that we were having. Having said that, we think that the share price still represents a very high level of confidence in the company and its operational excellence. I think we can move on to Q&A session, and we will be happy to take any questions that you may have on the presentation or otherwise. Thank you so much.
Hi. Thank you for the presentation. I think thank the management for giving us a detailed brief. I'm Sundar from Gulf Father. I think I always met your management team. I think always pleasure. And in terms of what we are seeing now, because we have been tracking the sector for a long time, and at this moment what we are seeing is a transformation for the entire sector. And the power company is, because we have been seen Aqua Power as a company which historically has provided good return. But if you look at the scenario where we are standing, the power sector, which was seen as a stable sector, there has been more uncertainties, especially to the shareholders. And in the context of the market transforming from a PPA to a kind of spot market, because we are in an uncertain environment where we are not clear about what will happen beyond 2022 to the going concern of the company. Basically, with the way you are talking about the major impairment of MSF, which is going to be taking a hit, and RO1 and RO2 is also under discussions. And we want to know where are we standing, because eventually this will happen for all the other companies going out of the PP also. This has created a major uncertainty for all the equity investors, and we want you to give us some thoughts on what is happening, and because this is clearly becoming more uncertain for us in terms of how we are going to project our numbers, what is going to be the PPA beyond that period. We are not able to see the return from now on in terms of the power sector companies. That's my first question. And my second question is on because they're talking about MSF being a technology, whatever change. In future, probably another 5 years or 10 years, if renewables are coming on a big way, do you think that will also become a major issue for the other PPAs? These are the two questions which I want to be on a, because it's not for your company, on a sectoral basis. I want your views on that. Thank you.
Thanks. I think you are not only from spot market, but you are spot on in your own questions. And welcome to the team. I think, allow me, on behalf of my colleagues, is actually what you are highlighting is actually we all at the generator side, generating company side, and public in the same situation where we are working closely with the authorities to trying to establish the future, say, of the sector, and eventually which will translate into the business of the companies. Now, your questions are more focusing on beyond 2021 or 2022. In its nature, then it's going down to 20 by 2024, and then only then slightly will reduce. Tells us there the demand, the market is there. Now, how that demand is covered by all the companies, we are in what I mentioned, alluded earlier, both the power side and the water side in direct dialogue. And given the live situation, we are not in a position to give any speculative answer, because anything which we can say or inform will be more of a speculative, and that is not in our domain. What I can tell you that our assets are designed, built, and maintained for the lifespan of these assets. We believe they are capable, despite all the changes we had, they still be maintaining a high record of availability and what you call reliability side, both water and the water. What's left here is the two contractual arrangements post 2022. That, as I mentioned, both the power and the water are of a direct discussion. Given the nature of that discussion, we cannot disclose the scenarios because we are in discussions. And one thing here, all the companies, the sector has to fulfill its obligation for the demand, and that's the most important part. There are no, the two more built facilities, which is coming recently, coincidentally, a couple of them by Aqua Power Group in Suhana Nubri, they are filling part of that demand. But the Barca and the other facilities in the network are taken into consideration by the authorities to fulfill that projection. Now, what is the contractor? One of the things which is coming in, a spot market, is still new, and we are still engaging with the authorities, you have many things changing at once, which makes it slightly exciting. And also, while still in discussions, none of these contracts have really come out publicly with a given answer in terms of the terms. It's difficult for us to speculate, including the RFO, because the request for effort is not common for everybody. It's like a one-to-one decision, which didn't reach anywhere. Does not mean that it is the end of the business for Aqua Power Park. So I hope you can understand the sensitivity of the situation. We cannot speculate.
But one thing, when is they're talking about trial spot and next year, correct? 2020, the trial
Yes.
spot. They're ready for it?
Yes, in fact, we already in process, and actually by the end of 2019, there is actually a very clear program by AER, Authority for Electricity Regulators, is that technically, operationally, system-wise, process-wise, procedures-wise are in place and are being in a process of validation. Teams are involved from Aqua Power Park as well, whether operation or contractual, and arrangements are being sort of finalized. This spot market is actually on top of the base load, and this is just to take care of between the base load and the peak load. And in that period, some companies will have the luxury between base and spot, some may not.
And on the company specific, the dividend for the last year is basically pertaining to the taxation, correct? And otherwise, I think you will be from now on, again a projection, but I think I'm looking at the dividend profile will continue till 2021, because last year the dividend was not there because of this tax payments, correct?
I think again it's kind of a speculating
No, just
thing.
talking about the policy, dividend policy.
I mean, the policy is very clear. It has been from the past that what essentially company do is that all cash available for distribution after meeting its operating expenses and debt service is being paid to the shareholders. But we cannot, comment upon how the dividends will be from 2019 onwards. So we would not like to speculate at this moment of time how the dividend stream will be again future. But yes, the policy, as a matter of policy, it has always been to maximize distribution to the shareholders.
But one thing is, last year, because of this tax payment, you have not paid. That's what I want to clarify.
That is correct.
That is correct.
That is correct. It was clarified to the shareholders during the AGM as well.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have a few questions. I can say it in Arabic. With regard to desalination, both MSF or RO, right? You are going to bid on a combined cycle gas turbine with steam turbine, is it right? For the future? I attended a meeting in Fort Suhar, and they were also sort of unqualified for water. It becomes a story in the town. Okay? Now, where is water coming from? Perhaps it's a big question. At the same time, question for you as operation of the plant, I'm not of the board. The efficiency of the plant is going down. If you run an MSF with gas turbine, with the steam turbine desalination, especially on the MSF, the efficiency of the plant is a completely different scenario than if you are working on a simple cycle. At the same time, my third question comes. You have bid for RO and you have taken over the RO a few years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago. I wonder why it's only 4 or 5 years ago and you cannot now, you are getting unqualified for the water. For the water unqualified. But you are not going to run, or the question will be, what are you going to do with our plant and how is the plant going to run? So let's start with efficiency. What's your views on the efficiency of the plant? It's a technical question.
Yeah, the
plant which we are offering post 2021 as part of Power 22 is a combined cycle. It's not open cycle, it's gas turbine with steam turbine, which is still efficient. But if we compare it with the latest plant, yes, because it's a new technology which is coming up now. So in comparison, it is not as efficient as new machines are. But as a technology, if we see, yes, still we are offering in combined cycle, and it is efficient than the simple cycle. MSFE, yes, if we are operating as a whole cycle, it brings improvement in efficiency. But in comparison to RO plant, that is still expensive. The steam which we additionally burn to produce water in the MSFE plant, it makes it expensive than the conventional RO plants, which is more mechanical. So that's the reason the preference of the off-taker now is the RO plants, not the MSFE plant. So you must have observed that in last few years, all the plants which have been built are RO plants. There is no MSFE plant.
Water versus power. Sure, the efficiency is different.
Right.
That's not the question, that's out of question. My question is, you are going to bid with others on an open market, open spot market, with only combined cycle, steam turbine, gas turbine.
Yes.
Right? Perhaps there are other plants will come out with only gas turbine, simple cycle, like
Correct. Yeah.
coming, and perhaps Kamil and Manah, whatever. Manah is going.
Yes.
Or maybe closing down. Hobra, I don't know.
Obra is gone, yes.
Obra is decommissioned.
It's partly closed, but the RO is still there, right?
Yeah, RO obviously is separate, yes.
Something could be
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Or
The spot market is only for
what will
power.
happen in the Hobra when they turn off all the other plants, the old plants I stayed with in the 80s. Right. My question is, how are you going to bid against something which is competitive to you? You know, it's a very difficult question.
Right. You see the concept.
You have already thought about it, how you're going to bid. It's very
You
important.
see, right now.
It's very important for the shareholders,
Right.
for the future.
Right. Right now, the plants which are retiring, efficiency-wise, they are similar to our plants or worse than our plants. The Al-Kamil
It's simple cycle.
is simple cycle, Rusail is simple cycle. Okay, Sohar 1 is the only one which is again combined cycle, which carries the same technology which our plant carries. So right now, we are at par with Sohar 1, whereas better than other simple cycle plants.
So you think there will be no other dual, we call it dual purpose.
Yes.
So there will not be another dual purpose plants
Other-
in the future?
Other plants will come, yes.
Yeah, sure. Go.
Those will come.
Will come for dual purpose while the others retire, you know. These are the existing. So they could, you have to find out, I think, you have to find out from OPWP, what is beyond the export market. What you are going to bid for a tariff for all the time, which I think, I don't know, maybe 15 years more. You have to think about this tariff, how you build it, while bidding,
The spot market,
competing with
yeah, the spot market concept here, which is to be implemented in Oman, the understanding which we have till this date is slightly different than the rest of the spot markets. Here we have to basically go ahead or price it based on the actual variable cost which we will be incurring. Then the regulator will be deciding a scarcity payment which will be paid to the companies which have participated in the spot market based on their reliability, how reliable they were. So it is slightly different than the rest of the world.
If I may add as well, there are a number of new projects on new plants are being commissioned as we speak, and they will be on stream in this year, in 2019. So in terms of power demand and supply perspective, OPWP has taken sort of an approach, cautious approach with the existing contracts or existing producers like Barca 1 and Sohar 1, a few others, to allow or to prioritize utilization of the existing under the Power 2022. Power 22 contract is primarily focusing on the existing on two things. One is actually identifying which was more in terms of production efficiency and in relation to gas utilization, because eventually the biggest cost to us, to all of the generators in terms of power, is the gas. That gas has a more scarcity and it has a price element to it. Given into that situation versus newer plants, but they will be high capital intensive. So there is a balancing point where existing plants, even though they are slightly less efficient than the new one, our life cycle, given past 50% threshold, past the 20 years, our capital charge or capacity charge will be comparably competitive to the newer ones. And this is where we have a Power 2022. It's a two-stage where we are in at the moment. On top of the Power 2022, there is the addition of spot market for certain period. Now, both are interrelated. I wish I can explain more, but we are also in the same situation where it is very dynamic, and unfortunately, it is too many at the same time. I think it has started from early 2018. 2019 will be the peak of these discussions and more turbulence coming in, but I'm sure the outcome in terms of all these activities, whether water or power, the ultimate goal is maximize utilization of existing, because of in terms of cost competitiveness to the new. There will be no new plant built unless the technology has overshadowed the cost element, and it is extremely unlikely possible. We have seen this. I think one of the earlier questions was on the renewable side. The market is seeing unprecedented phase of change of technology. We are very fortunate. Since the beginning, we had a very good setup in terms of power utilization, fuel efficiency. Still not good enough to compete with a newer one, because we are 20 years difference. Some old machines still can do that, and we have that luxury despite the changes. Now comes the capacity, as I mentioned. We have, we are in Oman where capacity is still growing, demand is still growing, capacity is still growing. It's at a healthy rate, it's not plateauing. The moment we start seeing there's no capacity, then definitely there will be a lot of concern, everybody, including the participants. Now, one thing which is I can say is like maybe sports leagues, everybody wants to have to be the champion or want to be the end one or two or three. But does not mean there is no match. There is a match. Us, we are competing, we are pulling ourselves together to actually not only for power, but also for the water side, competing with the existing, making sure that our reliability will be the selling point to overcome such challenges. OPWP, in their own domain, are rightly doing the best for what they believe is right, procuring economically. So now we are in that what I call final transition state. May take us, it took us 2018 as a gradual phase. 2019, you will see a much more tense discussions, maybe disclosures, sometimes good news, sometimes extremely bad news, and you have to bear with the market. We are a participant, we are a player. Hopefully we can succeed in becoming active player post 2021.
A couple of questions, if you don't mind. You didn't answer for me for the existing plant, MSF and RO. What's your plan for it for a couple of years?
Okay. No, I think our focus actually now is primarily not to think of something alternative. It's actually our focus is more with dealing with OPWP, or negotiating with OPWP, finding halfway ground. So our focus is primarily, because we still have 3 years and we have enough time to find continuation for these assets, which is what, as you all see, has a lot of life to offer, and we believe that still our management focus, the shareholders, the board focus is finding continuation on the existing setup and the new terms, which is understandable. Now, again, the speculative side, post-2022, and what if, I think that is already in our domain. That's why it is in a top priority for the management and the board, on behalf of the shareholders, to identify solutions. But then that only can be disclosed or brought back into the public once we have a firm position with current discussions. Because the moment we are talking about that, as if we are thinking ourselves we are not winning. And no player wants to see himself or herself not winning.
Yeah, but you are declaring that water business is closing down in your sector, your company.
Certainly it is like for the MSFE part. For RFO still, we have lost the initial dialogue, which is the request for offer. Does not mean that that's the end of this. This is what I say, it's a very delicate situation where we are in continuation, we are discussing, we have not taken the same approach of MSF. In the MSF, we have taken the approach realizing technology has been superseded in terms of fuel efficiency, gas versus power and fuel efficiency. So from a market trend, a technology trend, as a generator, realizing MSF is extremely unlikely for competitive situation to compete with RO power-based technology. So that's why we've taken the impairment to another thing. For RO, it is new, it is still in discussion. We don't see ourselves saying that, and nobody foreseen the situation that would be in this situation, but we are in dialogue with the authorities. Post that, the whole water sector is evolving and the demand is still growing. If you allow it, we don't want to get into the kind of what would be, but I'm sure by the time comes, we'll have a more robust answer to your questions.
Just to clarify that, the MSFE plant still has a contract period until end of 2021. 31st December 2021.
It's extension. Contract is over.
Yes.
15 years over.
15 years over, but it is still subject to the extension that we negotiated with OPWP in 2017. So essentially the contract period for MSFE plant was extended until end of 2021. So it will continue to operate until 31st December 2021. And yes, after 2021, we don't think that it will operate as we understand it now.
Can I conclude that your share in the market will be a risky short share within the coming 3 years? Sorry to ask you that.
It's a difficult question.
We're looking for you to answer that, not the
Again, I will not speculate, but not necessarily. I think there is a lot happening, as Salim also mentioned, that we are part of the Power 2022 procurement process for the power block, which is the PPA, the 2 RO plants under consultation and discussion with different authorities. And of course, the spot market is another option after 2021. So there is still, a lot to be understood, and the clarity in terms of share price and where it should stand will only come, in future. It will be a little bit too much to comment upon at this stage.
If I may add to that as well, is actually into multiple pots. One of the pots, us here, the management with NOMAD, are primarily dealing with the asset health, business robustness, competency, in terms of environment, in terms of social side, and readiness. And readiness whenever we are called upon to deliver. That's our most priority as management of the asset. There's another part which is primarily the shareholder side, where this will be discussed at the shareholder level, what has been decided in the past, and I'm sure many of these issues will be discussed once disclosed and available to the shareholder to decide on. As a management, I would like to assure everybody here on behalf of my colleagues and NOMAD, our priority is maintaining the health of the asset and that we are competitive and reliable despite the age factor. The age factor in terms of the availability and reliability. We don't want to get into a situation where physically we are the first priority in many things, but I like to keep that to the other side to indicate.
Question. I have more questions. I'll make it last one.
Yes.
For the dividend for 2018. Now, I find that you have a lot of still retained asset, retained money, whatever you call it.
Earnings.
Retained earnings.
Yeah.
You have gone on some losses because of
Impairment.
because of disaster ones. Why did you disclose it? I know maybe it's not your, perhaps it's the board decision, but perhaps to understand why you didn't give any dividend, don't recommend any dividend for this year.
For which year?
2018.
For 2018, again, it's the same reason. The unfortunate decision by Supreme Court, which was against the company, required almost 4.7 billion Omani Riyal tax payments go towards the tax department. Unfortunately, we don't have any recourse since the decision came out from the Supreme Court. It is also unfortunate in the sense that until appeals court, the decision was in favor of the company. So yes, it is something that we have to deal with, and accordingly we thought that the company will not be able to pay any dividends because it has to direct the cash towards the tax payment, and hence no dividends for 2018. That was the
I'm talking about retained earnings.
retained earnings.
We have only 3 years for this
Sure.
existing contract. Now, if something else will come in future.
Retained earnings need to be backed by the cash available with the company as well. The main thing that drives the distribution of the shareholder is availability of cash, which was not there because we had to direct the cash towards the tax payments. So although retained earnings are there, but cash is not available with the company for dividend distribution for 2018, and hence no dividends.
One quick question on your revenue and EBITDA levels. Are they going to be stable over the next 3 years? Because I'm seeing the lease revenue, which is there, is 10% lower. So one question on that, on the revenue, and what's your outlook on the EBITDA level? Is it going to be stable over the next 3 years?
Again, generally we don't speculate about the future events because the EBITDA line is essentially dependent on the operational performance. But since the contracts are fixed under the contract until 2021, this is what the expectation is. The EBITDA level should be maintained unless, God forbid, we face any unfortunate incident. For example, the 2 generator failures that business faced in 2018, last quarter. Obviously, we lost significant amount of revenue because of that. So until any unfortunate event happens, this is what we will expect until 2021. But again, it's just a general comment from my side rather than any commitment.
So is it going to be stable?
This is what I said, that yes, having, assuming that operationally the plant will operate the way it should be, yes.
Okay. And is there any covenants in the financial agreement that says probably you might be having some insurance revenue, insurance reimbursement which is coming up as a result of this GT1 failure? Is that correct? Will there be any insurance revenue for that?
Definitely.
And is that distributable?
The assets are adequately protected by insurance coverages. We are already in a discussion with the insurers on the 2 claims that we have. But obviously there are deductibles for these insurances. So the company will have to take an impact in terms of those deductibles. For example, the business interruption deductible is for 45 days. Effectively meaning the revenue that we lose for 45 days is something that company needs to absorb. But yes, over and above, it is expected that we will recover. But yes, significant revenue was lost and absorbed by the company in 2018 results because of the 2 failures that we faced.
Okay. So what I'm trying to understand is how much dividend you will be able to give over the next 3 years. So I'm seeing that the EBITDA is around 20 million, and you have a debt service of close to around 15 million, and a capex of let's say, or maintenance capex of let's say around 1.5 million riyals. So is that numbers somewhere,
I don't think I'm in a position to speculate again about the next 3 years. I mean, as I said, the policy is to maximize dividends in terms of what the cash availability is with the company. But I think we all should consider the fact that there are other requirements in terms of maintenance of the plant. These are aging plants, so there will be a consideration what kind of capex will be required going forward. All of this is something that will be considered by the company in coming years. So it is very difficult for me to give a definitive answer about the future dividend distribution as far as the company is concerned.
And another question is on the Power 2022. I know your restrictions on discussing that further, but so how Power has won the Power 22, or has won, maybe it's a phase 1. So wasn't it a competitive bidding, or is it a one-to-one consultation between different companies?
It is a competitive bidding between the existing generators whose contracts are expiring near 2021 and 2022. But just to clarify that they have not won any contract at this stage.
Qualified.
It is a pre-qualification stage, and we also are qualified now to bid under the Power 2022 process, similar to Sohar Power. The status more or less is exactly the same. The only thing different was that yes, they were also trying to negotiate a PWPA with OPWP so that they can contract their MSFE plant, which unfortunately for them never happened. So they are almost in a similar situation like Aqua Power.
Okay, thank you.
They ended up taking an impairment as well.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, yeah. So we are in the same boat.
Thank you very much, everyone. I think with this session comes to a close. We would like to thank the panel from Aqua Power for coming here and hosting the session. Thank you. Thank you for attending. Have a good day. Have a nice weekend. Wassalam.
Thank you for giving us.
Thank you so much.